Have you ever sat in an English meeting, listening carefully, understanding many words, but saying nothing? You sit there, quiet.
Your heart is beating fast. You want to speak, but your mouth stays closed. After the meeting, you think, why didn't I say something?
I had an idea. I had a question.
But I stayed silent. If this is you, you are not alone. Many English learners can read, write, and even understand, but they cannot speak with confidence.
They are afraid to make mistakes. They are afraid other people will laugh.
They are afraid their English is not good enough, so they say nothing. Inside, they feel small and invisible.
Welcome to Audiobook English Stories. Here, we don't just learn English through rules and exercises.
We learn English through real and powerful stories. Today, I will share a story about a silent learner. She is a normal office worker, just like many of you. In her meetings, she almost never spoke. She felt that her English voice was locked inside her. This story is about how she moved from silent learner to confident speaker, step by step, with very small daily habits. You will hear her fears, her problems, her first failures, but also her small wins and her big breakthrough moment. While you listen, I want you to think about your own English story. Maybe you will see yourself inside her journey. You do not need perfect English to speak. You only need the courage to open your mouth and a simple plan to practice every day. Let us begin her story. My name is Anna, and for a long time, I was the quiet person in every English meeting. I work in an international company. Many of my colleagues come from different countries. We have weekly meetings in English with my manager and my team. In these meetings, I sit at the table with my notebook, my laptop, and my coffee. I listen carefully. I understand many things. But I almost never speak. At the beginning, I thought this was normal. I told myself, my English is not ready. I need more time. I should listen first. So I listened and listened and listened. Months passed. My listening slowly improved, but my mouth stayed closed. Inside the meeting room, my voice felt like it was locked behind a heavy door. I had ideas, but they stayed inside my head. During the meeting, my manager would ask questions. Does anyone have a suggestion? My colleagues from other countries raised their hands. They gave opinions, even when their English was not perfect. Sometimes they used the wrong word. Sometimes their grammar was not correct. But they spoke anyway. People listened to them, answered them, and respected them. They were not native speakers, but they were visible. I watched them and thought, their English is not perfect, but they are brave. My English is not perfect, so I stay quiet. Every time I wanted to speak, a voice in my head said, careful. Your pronunciation is bad. Your sentence is wrong. They will judge you. Better to say nothing. So I stayed silent. Outside the meeting room, I did not look like a shy person. I laughed with my close friends in my own language. I spoke on the phone with clients in my own language. I could explain difficult things in my own language very clearly. I was not stupid. I was not lazy. But when the meeting was in English, everything changed. I felt small, weak, and slow. After each meeting, I walked back to my desk with a heavy feeling in my chest. I opened my email and started to work, but my thoughts were still in the meeting.
I should have said something when they talked about that project.
I had a good idea, but I did not share it.
I am always the quiet one. People will think I have nothing to say. One day, after a very long meeting, my manager stopped by my desk. He smiled and said, "Anna, you work very hard. Your reports are always good, but in our meetings, you are very quiet." His words were kind, but they hit me like a soft punch. I realized something important. My silence was not only a language problem. It was also a confidence problem. My manager believed I had ideas. My team believed I had value. But because of my fear, nobody could hear my English voice. That evening, I went home feeling tired and sad. I looked in the mirror and asked myself a simple question. Do I want to be the quiet person in the room for the next 5 years? The answer came quickly. No. In that moment, I did not magically become a confident speaker. Nothing big happened yet, but inside, a small decision was born. I knew I could not stay silent forever. I knew I needed to change something, even if it was just one very small habit. This is where my journey truly began, not with perfect grammar or a fancy course, but with a tired office worker looking into a mirror and deciding, I don't want to be silent anymore. A few weeks after that evening in front of the mirror, nothing outside had changed yet. I still went to work at the same time. I still sat in the same chair in the meeting room. I still opened my notebook and wrote the date at the top of the page. But inside, I was a little more awake. I started to notice my silence more clearly. One Monday morning, we had a big project meeting. Important managers from another country joined us online. The air in the room felt heavy. Everyone looked serious. This project was important for the company, and people wanted to share their ideas. The meeting started. My manager opened the slide deck and explained the main problem. Then different team members began to speak. One colleague gave a suggestion about the timeline. Another colleague talked about the budget. A third colleague asked a question about the risks. I sat there, listening, taking notes, and thinking, I also have a small idea. Maybe I can help with this part of the project. In my head, I built a sentence in English. I wrote it softly in my notebook. I think we can test this plan with a small group first. I looked at that sentence for a long time. It was simple. The grammar was okay. I understood every word, but I did not trust my own voice. Then it happened. My manager looked around the room. His eyes stopped on me. Anna, he said, what do you think? My heart jumped. Suddenly, all the English words in my mind started to run away. The sentence in my notebook became blurry. I felt all the eyes in the room turn in my direction. My face felt hot, and my hands got cold. Inside my head, there were many thoughts. Say something. This is your chance. No, your pronunciation is terrible. What if they don't understand you? What if you make a mistake and everyone remembers it? The room was quiet. It was my turn to speak, but my mouth did not move. I tried to push the sentence from my notebook into my voice, but it was like pushing a big rock up a hill. I'm not sure, I finally whispered. I think maybe the plan is okay. It was a very short answer. I did not share my idea. I did not add value. I did not use my sentence. I just survived the moment.
My manager nodded politely and moved on to the next person. The meeting continued as if nothing had happened, but inside me, something broke.
For the rest of the meeting, I barely heard anything. My body was in the room, but my mind was somewhere else, replaying that moment again and again. I felt a mix of shame, disappointment, and anger at myself. When the meeting ended, everyone stood up, picked up their laptops, and walked out. I stayed in my chair for a few extra seconds, pretending to check my phone. My eyes looked at the notebook. The sentence was still there, quiet and perfect on the paper. I think we can test this plan with a small group first. I had a good idea. I had a good sentence. But fear was stronger than my voice. On the way back to my desk, my inner voice continued to attack me.
Why are you like this? You understand. You work hard, but when it is time to speak, you disappear.
You are an adult. You are a professional. Why can't you say one simple sentence in English in a meeting? That night, I could not sleep well. I lay in bed, looking at the ceiling, feeling the same shame again. I knew something important. My problem was not that I had zero English. My problem was that I had zero confidence in my English. In that painful moment, a small thought appeared. If I do nothing, this will happen again and again for many years. But if I do something, even something very small, maybe my next meeting can be different. That thought was the first tiny light in a very dark room. I did not know it yet, but this failed meeting was the beginning of a new path. Sometimes the moment that breaks your heart is the same moment that opens your eyes.
The next morning, I woke up tired, but the feeling from the meeting was still fresh.
I did my normal routine. I brushed my teeth, made coffee, checked my messages. But inside, I kept thinking about that one simple sentence I never said. I knew I could not change yesterday, but I also knew something had to change for tomorrow. On the way to work, I sat on the bus and looked out the window. People were walking fast on the street. Cars and motorbikes moved in all directions. Everything outside was busy, and my mind was busy too. I took a deep breath and thought, okay, Anna, you cannot become a perfect English speaker in one day. But maybe you can do one small thing today. I opened the Notes app on my phone and typed something very simple in English. Today, I will use my English voice, even a little. The sentence was not beautiful, but it was honest. I read it again and again in my head. Then I did something I had never done before. I whispered the sentence out loud, very quietly, so that nobody could hear. Today I will use my English voice, even a little. My voice sounded soft and shaky, but it existed. For the first time, I was not just thinking in English. I was talking to myself in English, even if it was just one sentence. It felt strange, but also a little powerful, like I had found a tiny door inside a big wall. When I arrived at the office, I made a decision. I would start a new habit. Every day, I would say at least 5 simple English sentences about my day. They did not need to be perfect. They did not need to be long. They just needed to come out of my mouth. I started with very basic sentences in my head, and then out loud, quietly at my desk or in the restroom. Today, I have a meeting. I feel nervous.
I want to share one idea. I am afraid, but I want to try.
I will say at least one sentence in the meeting. These sentences were like small warm-up exercises for my voice. I did not worry about fancy vocabulary or difficult grammar.
I focused on being honest and simple. Slowly, I noticed something. When I spoke these sentences, my fear did not completely disappear, but it became a little smaller. In the evening, when I got home, I stood in front of the mirror.
I looked at my own face and tried another new habit. I decided to practice a few safe sentences that I could use in any meeting. Sentences that were short, clear, and useful. Sentences that could help me enter the conversation without feeling too much pressure. I practiced saying, "Can I add something?" and watched my mouth move in the mirror. At first, it felt awkward. My tongue felt heavy, but I repeated it many times, slowly and clearly. "Can I add something? Can I add something?"
Then I tried, "I agree with that point."
After that, I have a small suggestion. I said each sentence again and again, sometimes with a serious face, sometimes with a little smile, just to relax my muscles.
These were not big speeches. They were not long presentations.
They were just simple keys that could open the door to the conversation. I promised myself that in the next meeting, I would use at least one of these keys. I did not need to give a perfect idea. I only needed to enter the room with my voice. Over the next few days, I continued my small habits.
On the bus to work, I spoke quietly to myself in English about my day. At my desk, I whispered short sentences when nobody was listening.
In the bathroom, I practiced my safe sentences in front of the mirror. Little by little, these actions started to feel less strange and more natural.
I was still the same Anna, the same office worker with the same job and the same colleagues. But inside, something was slowly shifting. I was not waiting for confidence to fall from the sky.
I was building it, one small sentence at a time. I did not know exactly when my next chance would come, or how I would feel in the next big meeting.
But for the first time, I felt that I was preparing for that moment, not just hoping it would somehow be easier. My English voice was still small and quiet, but it was finally moving.
The next weeks did not bring any magic. There was no movie moment, no dramatic change in one day. Life looked almost the same from the outside.
I still arrived at the office at 9. I still answered emails. I still joined meetings.
But inside my daily life, my new habit was slowly growing. Every morning on the way to work, I used the time as my mini English gym.
On the bus, I looked out the window and talked softly to myself in English. I described what I saw and what I felt.
The weather is cloudy today. There are many people on the street.
I feel a little tired, but I want to practice. Sometimes I talked about my plans for the day.
Today, I have one big meeting. I want to say at least one sentence.
I will try to use my safe sentences. These sentences were not beautiful. They were not advanced.
But they were mine. They trained my tongue, my mouth, and my confidence.
I was not just thinking English. I was living with English, even for a few minutes each day. At work, I found small moments to practice too. When I walked to the kitchen to get coffee, I whispered in English, "I need a break. I will get some coffee."
After this, I will answer my emails. When I opened a new email from a foreign colleague, I read the first line quietly out loud before I answered.
My voice was still soft, but it was not silent anymore. In the evening, my mirror became my second teacher. I stood in front of it, looked into my own eyes, and practiced my safe sentences like a short script.
Can I add something?
I agree with that point.
I have a small suggestion. Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
At first, I felt silly.
I laughed at myself a little. But then I realized something important.
In the meeting room, my fear was big because everything was new and public. In front of the mirror, it was just me and my reflection. It was a safe place to make mistakes and to sound strange. Slowly, I started to connect my sentences with real situations in my mind. I imagined my colleagues sitting around the table.
I imagined my manager asking for ideas. Then I said my sentences into the mirror as if I was inside the meeting. Can I add something? I said, looking at my reflection as if it was my manager. I have a small suggestion, I continued, pretending that my reflection was my team. By doing this, I was training not only my mouth, but also my brain. I was teaching my mind that these sentences were normal and available, not scary and impossible. After 2 or 3 weeks, I noticed a small change. In real meetings, my fear was still there, but it felt a little lighter. When someone shared an idea that I liked, a small voice inside me said, "You can say, I agree with that point." One day, during a short team meeting, a colleague presented a new plan. I felt that his idea was good. My heart began to beat faster, but this time something different happened. "I agree with that point" appeared in my mind very clearly, almost like a friend standing next to me. My fear said, "Stay quiet." My new habit said, "You know this sentence. You have said it many times. Just use it once." Before I could change my mind, I opened my mouth and spoke. "I agree with that point," I said. The room did not explode. Nobody laughed.
In fact, most people did not even look surprised.
My colleague smiled and nodded. The meeting continued. It was a small moment, but for me, it felt huge. For the first time, my practice at the bus stop, in the kitchen, and in the mirror had crossed the line into the real world. That day, on the way home, I smiled quietly to myself. I had not given a long speech. I had not changed the whole project. But I had done something very important. I had proved to myself that my English voice could leave my head, cross my lips, and enter the room. My new habit was still small, but it was alive. And it was growing. For a while, things moved in a good direction. I kept my small habits. I spoke simple sentences to myself on the bus. I practiced my safe phrases in the mirror. In meetings, I tried to say at least one short line when I could. My fear was still there, but it was not the boss anymore. It had to share the space with my new courage. But life does not always move in a straight line. One month, our company started a very busy period. There were new projects, deadlines, and extra tasks. I often stayed late at the office and came home feeling exhausted. On those days, my small English habits were the first things to disappear. In the morning, instead of practicing sentences on the bus, I scrolled through my phone and read the news in my own language. In the evening, instead of standing in front of the mirror, I lay on the bed and watched random videos until I fell asleep. I told myself, I am too tired today.
I will practice tomorrow. Tomorrow became the next day.
The next day became the next week. Slowly, the little English voice I had been building became quieter again.
One afternoon, we had another big meeting. I had not practiced my safe sentences for many days. I walked into the room already feeling weak.
As the meeting started, that old familiar fear returned, stronger than before. People shared ideas, argued, discussed. I had some thoughts, but they felt far away, behind a fog.
When a good moment came to say, "Can I add something?" I hesitated. The sentence did not come quickly like before.
It felt heavy again, like a rock in my throat.
So I stayed quiet. At the end of the meeting, I realized I had not spoken even one English sentence.
It was like going back to the beginning. The old shame returned. You are still the silent one.
Maybe that progress was not real. Maybe it was only luck before.
That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my notebook. I opened it and looked at some of my old notes. On one page, I had written, "Today I will use my English voice, even a little." On another page, I had written, "I will say at least one sentence in the meeting."
I felt sad. It seemed like I had broken my own promises.
A hard question came to my mind. Maybe English is just too difficult for me. Maybe I will always be this person, good at listening, good at writing, but silent when it matters. For a few minutes, I believed that thought. I imagined my future self, 5 years from now, still sitting in meetings, still quiet, still angry at herself. The picture made my chest feel tight. Then another thought appeared, softer but more honest. Did you really fail? Or did you just stop practicing? I realized something important. My progress before did not come from luck. It came from small, consistent habits. My current silence did not mean I was hopeless. It simply meant I had stopped doing what helped me grow.
I took a pen and wrote in big letters in my notebook, "Fear is not my biggest problem."
Stopping is my biggest problem. As I looked at that sentence, I felt a little stronger. I understood that feeling bad after a setback was normal, but staying down forever was a choice. I asked myself another question. If I could build this habit once, can I build it again?
The honest answer was yes. I had already proved that small daily practice worked. I just needed to return to it, gently, without attacking myself. That night, before going to bed, I stood in front of the mirror again. I felt a bit silly, a bit embarrassed. But I looked at my own eyes and said in a quiet voice, "Can I add something?" The sentence felt rusty, but it was still there. I repeated it a few more times. Then I added another. "I have a small suggestion." My reflection looked tired, but a small light was back in her eyes. I understood that confidence is not a straight road. It is a path with ups and downs. The important part is not to walk perfectly. The important part is to keep walking. A few weeks later, things at work became a little calmer. The big deadlines passed, and my schedule became more normal again. This time, I did not wait for motivation to come back by itself. I decided to restart my small habits on purpose. I went back to speaking simple sentences on the bus in the morning. I returned to the mirror in the evening. I practiced my safe sentences again and again.
But I added one more step. I started to prepare for real situations. If I knew there was a meeting on Wednesday, I asked myself on Monday, what is one idea I want to share? I wrote that idea in very simple English in my notebook. Then I practiced saying it out loud, like a short speech, but only 2 or 3 sentences long. I think we can start with a small test. This way, we can see the problems early. Then we can change the plan if we need to. I did not try to sound like a native speaker. I only tried to sound clear. When I made a mistake, I did not shout at myself in my head. I just corrected the sentence and tried again. Slowly, the idea of speaking in a meeting began to feel less impossible and more like a difficult but real task. One morning, my manager sent an email. We would have a strategy meeting with senior leaders next week.
It was an important one. The old fear woke up inside me immediately. This is big. Don't speak. You might say something stupid. But now I had another voice too. It said, "This is your chance. You can prepare. You do not need to speak perfectly." For the next few days, I prepared in my own quiet way.
Every evening, I wrote my idea in my notebook and then practiced it out loud. I imagined the meeting room, the faces of my colleagues, the eyes of my manager. I imagined him saying, "Anna, what do you think?"
Then I practiced my answer. I think we can test this plan with a small group first.
If it works well, we can use it for the whole team. If there are problems, we can fix them before we go bigger.
I repeated these sentences many times. Sometimes my voice shook. Sometimes I forgot a word and had to check my notebook. But I kept going. My goal was not to sound perfect. My goal was to feel ready enough to try. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. I walked into the room with my notebook and sat down at the table. My heart was beating fast, but I also felt something new, a quiet kind of strength. I knew I had a plan. The meeting started. People discussed numbers, dates, and responsibilities. As I listened, I realized that my idea actually fit the conversation. There was a moment of silence after one colleague finished speaking. Then my manager looked around the table. "Any other thoughts?" he asked. His eyes moved from person to person. Then he said, "Anna, do you have any ideas?" This time, the fear did not completely freeze me. It was still there, but it was not alone. My practiced sentences were standing beside it, like friends holding my hand. I took a breath. I felt my hands shaking under the table, but I kept my voice steady as much as I could. "Yes," I said. "I think we can test this plan with a small group first." The room was quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet now. People were listening, I continued, slowly. If it works well, we can use it for the whole team. If there are problems, we can fix them before we go bigger. I finished speaking and waited for the sky to fall. It did not. No one laughed. No one looked angry. Instead, one colleague nodded. Another said, "That's a good idea." My manager smiled and replied, "I like that approach. Let's consider a pilot test." The meeting moved on, but inside me, everything had changed. I felt my shoulders relax. My heart was still fast, but now it was beating with relief and surprise. I had spoken more than one sentence. I had shared a real idea, and people had listened. On the way home that day, I did not need to force a smile. It came naturally,
I understood something very important. My English was not perfect, but it was enough to be useful.
My voice was not loud, but it was real. I was no longer only a silent learner.
I was beginning to be a speaker. Months passed after that important meeting.
From the outside, my life looked almost the same. I still went to the office at 9, sat in the same meetings, and worked with the same people. But inside, something had changed.
I was no longer the person who always planned to speak next time and then stayed silent. In our weekly meetings, I still felt nervous when my manager asked for opinions.
My heart still beat faster when my name was called. But now, I was usually ready with 1 or 2 simple sentences.
Sometimes I only said, "I agree with that idea," or "I have a small question." Other times, I shared a short suggestion. Not every sentence was perfect, but every sentence was real.
My colleagues began to see me differently. Before, I was the quiet one. Now, I was the calm person who also spoke when it mattered. People started to ask, "Anna, what do you think?" More often. They did not care if my grammar was perfect.
They cared about my ideas and my effort. One day, after a team meeting, my manager walked beside me in the hallway. He said, "Anna, I can see you speaking more in English now."
Your suggestions are very helpful. I'm happy you are sharing your thoughts. His words were simple, but they felt like a small medal in my heart. I smiled and answered, "Thank you. I'm still nervous, but I'm trying."
At home that evening, I opened my old notebook. On one page, I read the sentence I had written months before. Today I will use my English voice, even a little.
I realized that this sentence was no longer just a dream. It had slowly become a habit. On the next line, I wrote a new sentence. I am not only a silent learner. Now, I want to talk to you. Maybe you understand more English than you speak. Maybe you sit in meetings, in classrooms, or with friends, and you stay silent because you are afraid.
If that is you, remember this: you do not need perfect English to speak. You need small daily habits and the courage to open your mouth even when you feel afraid.
Your first sentence can be very simple. I agree. I have a question. Or can I add something?
These small sentences are keys.
If you use them again and again, one day you will look back and see that you are not the silent person in the room anymore. You are someone whose English voice is heard. In this story, Anna did not change because her English suddenly became perfect. She changed because she made small, simple choices again and again.
Here are the main lessons from her journey, in clear English that you can use in your own life. Lesson 1. You do not need perfect English to speak. Anna waited for perfect English for many years, and during that time, she stayed silent. When she finally spoke in the big meeting, her English was not perfect, but it was clear enough.
People listened to her idea and accepted it. Your ideas are more important than perfect grammar. Lesson 2. Small daily habits are stronger than big dreams.
Anna's confidence did not come from one big action. It came from small actions. 5 simple sentences on the bus, a few minutes in front of the mirror, 1 short line in a meeting. These habits were small, but they repeated every day, and that repetition slowly changed her. Lesson 3. Prepare simple, safe sentences you can use anywhere.
Can I add something? I agree with that point. I have a small suggestion. Helped Anna enter the conversation.
They were short, but they opened the door. When you prepare and practice a few sentences like these, you will feel less lost and more ready in real situations.
Lesson 4. Fear is normal. Stopping is the real problem. Anna felt fear in almost every meeting, even after she improved. The difference was that she did not let fear decide for her anymore.
She kept practicing, even after busy weeks and setbacks. You do not need to remove fear completely. You only need to keep going, step by step, with your English voice.
Now it is your turn. You have listened to Anna's story, but your own story is still being written. I want you to take one small step today, right now, while this feeling is still fresh. In the comments, write one simple English sentence about your own promise.
Today, I will use my English voice when I talk to my colleague.
Today, I will use my English voice when I answer a question in class. Today, I will use my English voice when I practice in front of the mirror. Choose one real situation from your life and write it. The most important thing is that you decide to speak. When you write your sentence, you are already starting to change. If this story helped you, please like this video and subscribe to Jackson English Stories.
Share it with a friend who is also a silent learner. Let us grow together, one simple sentence at a time.